What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another Swift video. In today's video, we're going to learn how to build a full login and sign up system in SwiftUI with Firebase. So here's a sign-in UI that we already see. I've actually created an account already, but what we can actually do is hit create account here. We'll get this screen. Let's go ahead and create joe@gmail.com. We'll say maybe the password is going to be password, and I'll go ahead and hit create account, and boom, we have not only created the account, but we're also signed in. If I close and reopen the app, you'll see that the auth state persists. We can go ahead and sign out, and we can even sign back in, and all of this is being run through SwiftUI and Firebase. So if that all sounds good, and if that's something that interests you, definitely start by destroying the like button down below. Helps out a lot. Hit subscribe if you're into iOS and Swift and want to stick around. That said, let's get into building this out in SwiftUI. Alright, we're going to go ahead and get started by opening up Xcode and creating a new project. We're going to stick with the app template under iOS. Let's go ahead and call this SwiftUI Firebase Auth. Of course, make sure your language is set to Swift and both your lifecycle and interface are set to SwiftUI, and then go ahead and continue and save the project wherever you'd like. So the first thing we need to do is actually go ahead and create our UI, which will let the user either sign in or sign up. So let me go ahead and change the preview device here to maybe a 12 Pro Max. We'll go ahead and hit this resume button to load up our preview. And while that guy is loading up, I'm going to jump into our assets here and create a new image set. Go ahead and call it logo, and I just grabbed the WhatsApp logo here, so I'll just go ahead and drag that in, and then we can jump back to our content view here. So let's go ahead and design first and foremost our sign in view, and then we'll also design our sign up view. So let's go ahead and first create a navigation view as the top level view inside here, and then I'm going to design this inline here, and then we'll abstract it into its own view. So we'll say this is a VStack. It's going to have a navigation title on it, which will be perhaps sign in. And we probably want a nice image here, which will be the logo that we brought in. We'll make it resizable. We'll make it scale to fill. Nope, that's not what we want. We want it scale to fit, I should say. And then we'll also go ahead and give it a fixed width and frame. Width and height, I should say, of 150. Now, below the image, we're going to want our actual fields. So I'm going to create a VStack. And in here, we're going to want a text field. And the first thing is going to be the placeholder. So we'll go ahead and say email address. And we're going to want a state property to hang on to the actual input that we're giving in the field. So we're going to go ahead and create a state property wrapper up here called email, which will be an empty string by default. And we're going to want to create another field here, and this one is going to be a secure field. Now on both of these, we're going to want to go ahead and add a little bit of padding, just so everything is not flush up against the edge of the screen. Let's go ahead and hit resume on the right hand side, and maybe we can even put our preview here into dark mode just so we can see it a little bit better. Let's go ahead and change that as well, and let's also go ahead and try again one more time. Sometimes the preview is a little finicky. So we've got the logo, we've got our fields, we probably want a background color for our field, and we're gonna push everything to the top by adding a spacer here. So let me go ahead and add a background color on this. We'll go ahead and say this is color, and I'll go ahead and say this is a secondary background color like that. I'll also grab this and add it to this field as well, and let's just separate those out like that. Now, I also see that the field's sizing is not really correct, so we're going to quickly move this to be up, and now our fields are looking pretty good. The next thing that we want is an actual button to tap to actually be able to sign in, so we can go ahead and create it with an action and a label. We'll want to add a view here, so I'm going to go ahead and call it sign in. We're going to first and foremost give it a frame with a width of 200 and a height of 50. Let's fix that end there. Let's go ahead and give it a background color. So we'll say background. We'll say color.blue will be the background color. And I'll also go ahead and give it a corner radius of 8, just so things look a little bit nicer. And maybe we can even give it a foreground color of color.white. So cool, we've got a sign-in form that's looking pretty good. Let's go ahead and actually hook this up to Firebase. So in my browser here, I've got firebase.com opened up, and we are signed in here. So I'm going to hit this big plus, and we're going to create a project. I'll go ahead and call it maybe a SwiftUI Auth project. Go ahead and continue. It's going to ask us if we want Google Analytics hooked up, so we'll say sure thing. We'll select our default account, and this will start creating our project for us there. Now, while it's doing that, we can actually go ahead and close Xcode, and the reason we need to do that is we're going to open up Terminal, and we're going to bring in the dependencies into our project for Firebase. So we're going to go ahead and CD into the project, so it's on my desktop here. It's called SwiftUI, so let's see, SwiftUI Firebase Auth. We're going to want to do a CocoaPod init, so we'll say pod init. If you don't know about CocoaPods, I've got a separate video on them, but it's basically a way to bring in dependencies. We can go ahead and open up our pod file now, and we are going to bring in the two dependencies that we want, which is Firebase core. Make sure you lowercase the p in your pod, and then also you're going to want Firebase Auth. Once you've added those in your terminal, you can go ahead and run pod install. And while this is actually installing, if we come back to our browser, we'll see that this guy is done. And once we have gotten this far and created our dashboard, we want to do a few things. The first thing we want to do is under authentication, we're going to come in here and hit this get started button, this white button right here. It's going to go ahead and hopefully reload the page for us like that. And we are going to want email and password authentication. So we'll open this up, and we just want to enable the switch on here like so, and hit save. You can see that Firebase supports a variety of auth methods. We'll just stick with email and password for today. So cool. So we got this still chugging along over here, installing our dependencies. It takes a couple seconds, not too long. But essentially what we are going to want to do once this is good to go is back in our main dashboard, you'll see that we've created this project, but we still need to link a iOS app. So I'll go ahead and hit iOS. We want to go ahead and supply a few things here. So we're just going to give a name. So we'll say SwiftUI Auth example. And the more important thing that we need to supply is a bundle ID. And we can actually grab that bundle ID from our Xcode project as soon as it's done. We can probably actually just open up the Xcode proj here. Just bear with me. And we'll just go ahead and grab it. Sometimes CocoaPod installation takes a couple seconds, so just bear with it. I probably shouldn't bother Xcode while it's trying to install these. Sometimes CocoaPods are super quick because it caches them. Sometimes they're a pain in the butt and they're nice and slow. But let's just bear with this here. Hopefully not going to take too much longer. And feel free to forward the video just a smidge until we're at the point where we can start using these. You guys can probably hear my laptop fan get obnoxiously loud now, so just bear with me. So the reason you actually see a lot more than the two dependencies that we added in this list, it's almost done, cool, is because Google has a bunch of other dependencies that Firebase Auth and Firebase Core depend on. So now that that is done, we can actually go ahead and open our project folder and jump into our XC workspace. So now that we're in here, on the left-hand side, once Xcode decides to load, we are going to click our project. And right here, you'll see our bundle ID. Go ahead and copy it, and you want to paste it into our actual identifier right over here. Let's go ahead and paste that in, and we can go ahead and continue. And the most important part here is that the console will now give us this Google file that we need to download and bring into our project. So we can continue to hit next here. It's basically going to tell us to install the dependencies, which we have done already. So now we are going to hook up Firebase as well as our view model. So let's go ahead and drag in this file that we just downloaded, place it wherever you want, make sure that you copy it into your project. And the next thing we want to do is jump into our actual SwiftUI Firebase Auth app. So here what we want to do is first and foremost import Firebase, and then we also need to hook up a AppDelegate. So we can actually go ahead, and there is a property wrapper. If you start typing in AppDelegate, we want a AppDelegate property wrapper here. So we can actually say that the UI application delegate adapter is going to be a AppDelegate. And essentially, the AppDelegate, we need to have a class that we assign it to. So we'll go ahead and let me actually take this, and we'll go ahead and say it's going to be AppDelegate.self. And we need to actually create this AppDelegate here. So I can go ahead and say class AppDelegate is going to be a UI application delegate. And not the adapter, we want just a delegate, and we also need this guy to inherit from NS object. And now that we have this here, we can go ahead and implement the AppDelegate functions, and the one that we want is did finish launching with launch options. And we can just return true in here and also say Firebase app.configure. Now we need to actually hook up this AppDelegate to our SwiftUI interface here. So here it's saying that we've gone ahead and actually supplied the adapter, but what we need is we need a particular variable to hang on to this. So we can say AppDelegate equals this, and let's see if memory serves about the syntax for this property wrapper. I actually think what we want here is going to be var AppDelegate, and we can actually say this is of type AppDelegate, just like that. And let's see what other errors we need to deal with here. So it is yelling at us, cannot convert value of AppDelegate to expected argument of AppDelegate. So let's see what's going on. All right, so what we can actually do here is just delete that end there, and we should be good to go. So what we're saying is the AppDelegate adapter is our AppDelegate here, and it's going to be held in this instance. So that's actually all we need to do. Now let's go ahead and make sure that we're actually connecting to Firebase and not crashing by selecting a simulator and actually running the app. So when you bring in Firebase, the previews tend to get very, very unreliable, so you'll want to start to build and run it in a simulator. The first time you build your application after bringing in any type of Cocoa pods, the compile time will increase a little bit. It'll take a little more time to build because you've brought in, dependencies, so just bear with it. Should not take too long. But actually, while it's doing that, the other thing we could do, and actually looks like it just finished as soon as I said that, so let's make sure we're seeing stuff on our simulator and not crashing here. All right, we should be seeing our logo and our sign-in form, so just bear with us, and we'll see it momentarily. I swear the simulator loves to be slower whenever I'm doing videos. So there it is. Awesome. Okay, so we're not crashing. We're configuring Firebase. We've got our AppDelegate hooked up. Both light mode and dark mode are looking good. And now we can actually go and start using the Firebase APIs. So what we're going to do is we are going to create a class, and this is going to be our app view model. And we're going to have this inherit from observable object. And now what we want to go ahead and do is basically write all the functions that we want in here. So we're going to want a function to sign in with email, which will be a string, and a password, which will also be a string. Pretty simple. We're going to also want a sign up function, so we can go ahead and copy and paste that. We'll sign up with an email and password as well. And then we probably also want another property, which is going to say is signed in, which will return a boolean to us. So how do we actually hook up all of this stuff? Well, it's pretty simple actually. So first and foremost, you want to go ahead and import Firebase Auth. We need a reference to the auth auth object. So we can say this will be auth.auth. Not sure why Google names it redundantly, but it works. So we can say here, if auth.currentUser equals nil, we know that we're not signed in, right? So we want to say if it doesn't equal nil, this will resolve to true, hence we are signed in. Now in our sign in function, once again, we're going to say auth, and what we want to say is sign in, and we want the completion that takes a email and a password. So we'll pass in the email, we'll go ahead and pass in the password, and this gives us a completion block. Now this completion block gives us a result optional and a error optional, so we'll go ahead and grab it like that. And here I can go ahead and say guard that the result lowercase is nil, and we're going to make sure the error is nil. So result is not nil, rather I should say, and error is nil, and we know we have signed in. All right, so this is the point where we would need to go ahead and update something in our UI to indicate that we have successfully signed in. So let's see what the issue here is. Looks like I've got an extra paren that I can get rid of, and I can actually close the right panel here since we're using our simulator now just to get some more code room. So we've got email, password, and we're saying result in is what we want right there. We'll get rid of all of our errors. Sign up is pretty simple too. We can say go ahead and create a account with a user, create a user account with an email, a password, and once again, this also takes a auth result as well as a error just like that. And once again, in this block, I'm actually going to copy and paste it because it's exactly the same. We'll know that we have successfully signed in. So cool. Now, how do we hook it up to our UI? Well, we have this sign-in form, and we tap on this button. What we want to do is we want to pass the email and password that was entered into our functions up here. So what I'm going to go ahead and do back in our app where our application actually launches, we're going to inject a environment object into our contents view, and this is going to be our view model. And we'll go ahead and create this right up here for organization's sake, and this will be an app view model just like that. And now back in our contents view, we can actually get a reference to this by saying, give me the environment object, which is this guy, and this will be we can just call it a view model of type app view model. And then finally, we also want to hold our password in a different state here, so we'll change that to password and change the binding down here to be password as well. And in the button, we can now say view model, and we can say go ahead and sign in with the email and the password like that. Now, if we wanted to be better citizens, we could also go ahead and make sure that the email is not empty. We can also make sure that the password is not empty. If they are empty, we don't want to go ahead and actually try to sign in. We want to just go ahead and return. So this begs the question of what happens once we successfully sign in. Well, there's a couple of things that happen. So we could go ahead and show a different view, or we can go ahead and show, just get rid of the sign-in view. So what I'm going to actually go ahead and do is we're going to abstract the sign-in view into its own view down below. So what I can actually do is let me copy this whole thing, this whole content view, and bear with me. So we can copy this whole thing and paste it down below. I'm going to call this a sign-in view. We're going to still have the environment object, except we're going to get rid of the navigation view here. We'll still keep the VStack. We can highlight and hit Control-I to fix this indentation. And now what we can actually go ahead and do is back here, we can delete all of this business, and we can just say, this is a sign-in view, and we can get rid of this and this. So how do we actually conditionally show the sign-in view or the actual sign-up view or another view? So it's pretty simple. We can say if view model dot is signed in, go ahead and show a text and say you are signed in, else we can go ahead and show our sign-in view. So pretty simple. Now we also want to observe when our actual is signed in Boolean up here changes. So we can actually mark this to be is we can actually do it this way. Let's do it a different way. We'll say dollar or @published. So this one here, and we're going to say signed in is going to be false by default. And what I'll go ahead and do is we're going to assign this once the primary view appears. So on this navigation view, I'm going to say on appear, go ahead and on appear with a block in here. We're going to say this guy. We can actually get rid of this and make it simpler. So on appear, go ahead and say view model dot signed in is going to equal view model dot is signed in. So the naming might be a little confusing, but just bear with me. So now this is signed in is going to turn into signed in. And the benefit of using a published here is whenever this guy changes, we'll actually be able to update our view in real time because it's a binding. So whenever our auth here succeeds, we can say signed in is going to be true. And same thing we can do down here. Now both of these are going to be published, both of these are assigning published properties, so we need to do this on the main thread. So here we can go ahead and say dispatch queue main async, and go ahead and paste that in. And these are both inside of closures, so we want to retain and capture weak self to not cause a memory cycle, a memory leak, and a retain cycle, I should say. So we'll go ahead and put that there as well, and I'll also go ahead and capture weak self right there. And that error should go away. Awesome, like that. So let's go ahead and give this a run and make sure we're still seeing our sign-in UI. The last thing left to do is create a sign up UI. So we still see sign in, which is correct because we are indeed not signed in. But we want a way to create a user account because we don't have any users at the moment and we kind of need someone to sign up before we sign in. So what I can actually do is we can go ahead and take this whole thing and copy and paste it right down below. I'm going to call this a sign up view, and we're going to sign up with an email and password as well, and it'll be fairly similar to sign in. The only difference is going to be the title on here will be create account, and we're going to want to have this button say create account, just like that. And when we tap on the button, instead of saying sign in, we're going to say go ahead and try to sign up. Now on our actual current UI here, we're going to want to go ahead and show a button to allow the user to go and sign up to create an account. So where do we want to do that? Well, I'm going to do that right down here. We can go ahead and create a navigation link. And this navigation link will have a title and a destination. So the title is going to be perhaps create account, and the destination will be a sign up view, just like that. So let's go ahead and give this a run. Let me make sure that error goes away. All right, looking good. And we should be good to go. So I'll do a quick review before we wrap up since we've jumped around quite a bit. But let me actually add some padding to this because it's looking a little cramped with our button up above. So we should have created an account right here. When I tap on it, it pushes on to create an account. So let's go ahead and do this. I'm going to type in my email. We'll say hello@iosacademy.io. So it looks like it is auto-completing, which is not good. So one thing that we could do is on both of these fields, we can go ahead and supply the auto capitalize, and then there's also a disable auto correction, which takes in a boolean. So I'll do this one, and the auto capitalize will also go ahead and say that we want none. We don't want to auto capitalize anything. And I'll add both of these modifiers in the sign in as well as the sign up views, just to make sure our fields look and behave consistently. So let's try that one more time and hopefully we should be good to go. So I'm going to go ahead and say create an account. I'm going to try to create an account here, and we'll also go ahead and say our password is going to be password so I can remember it. Go ahead and tap on this and boom, we're signed in. Look how awesome that is. It actually dismissed it and it updated our UI in real time. Now when we rerun the app, we expect to be signed in still. We should not be signed out, which in fact we are. And just to make sure everything's looking good, if we come back to our dashboard and we refresh this, boom, there is our user for iOS Academy that we just created. Now, it dawned on me that we did not add a sign out button here, so let's go ahead and do that so we can actually test the sign in appropriately. I'll go ahead and say button is going to have an action and a label here, so I'll just go ahead and say text is going to be sign out. We'll go ahead and give it a foreground color of perhaps blue. And what do we want to do in here? Well, we're going to say viewModel.signout. Now let's go ahead and create that function here. We're going to say func sign out. Once again, we're in our view model now. And what I can go ahead and do is say auth dot sign out, and this can actually throw, so I'll just go ahead and prefix it with a try optional. And once we're actually done, we can just say self.signedIn is going to be false. So let's go ahead and try to sign out, make sure that works, test our sign in, and then we'll wrap it up. So we should have a sign out button now, which I am not seeing. So what gives? Let me see where that button is. So we've got a sign out here. Foreground color is blue. So let's see where our button is showing up, because it's not showing up to me. So let's see. We're going to add a background color of maybe, I don't know, let's go with like green perhaps. And we'll also go ahead and add a frame here with 200 and height will be 50. And we're definitely in the signed in if statement, so we should see that button appear. And if we're not seeing it, we'll need to figure out why that is. So let's see, we've got a button and action. Let me actually put this here. Worst case, we'll just add a on tap to our actual text there. But all right, there is our button. What we probably actually want in here, I just realized, is a vertical stack since we are inside of a navigation view. So let me go ahead and drop these inside of a vertical stack and give this a run one more time. And our button should be right below our text. Awesome, just like that. Let's just add some padding just to make it look a little nicer. I'm being a little nitpicky here, but just bear with me. We want to make sure things look and behave really nice. So we'll go ahead and tap on this and boom, we're back to our sign in. Let's go ahead and run the app again and we should still remain on sign in. And now let's test signing into our app. So we'll go ahead and enter in our email. Let me make sure I spelled that correctly. And I'll go ahead and enter in password, hit that sign in button and boom, we're signed in. And let's go ahead and run it again and make sure that it persists. And it in fact does, and awesome, we are looking good. So let's do a quick recap of what we actually did. It wasn't a lot, but it got a little lengthy. So first things first, you need to go to Firebase and create a project. It's completely free. Add in your bundle ID, take the Google plist file that it gives you and just drag it into your project like so. You want to also go into your main app entry point and you want to bring in an AppDelegate and just initialize Firebase there. And then we also created this app view model, which goes ahead and abstracts our business logic. Back in our content view, we have this app view model, which holds on to basically the isSignedIn state, the sign-in function, the sign-up function, and sign-out. Notice that none of these have completion handlers, and the reason for that is in SwiftUI, it's declarative, and we use this published property wrapper to actually update our view. Which brings us to our view. We've got our content view, which conditionally shows either this signed in state or the sign in view inside of a navigation view. Sign in is nothing more than two states for our text as well as two fields and a button. In our button action, we actually try to sign in. And sign up is actually identical. I literally copy and pasted it, only difference being the button and the function that's called, which is sign up. So bit of a quicker video today. Hopefully that makes sense. Let me know down below in the comments if you have any questions. If you haven't smashed the like button already, don't forget to do so. Helps out a lot with the YouTube algorithm. That's all I've got for you guys. Thanks again for watching. I'll see you in the next one.